Why are brands important? Best brands in the world, Coca-Cola. The total market value of the company is around one asset in particular makes up about 75 billion of that. And it's not the secret recipe, it's the brand. Brands are both a strategic as well as a financial asset. A strong brand creates customer loyalty, and that increases the value of your company, value which can grow if you continue to invest in the brand. There are many other benefits of brands. Brands allow you to set higher prices for your products and services. People associate higher quality to branded products, and they'll pay more than for a generic version even when the two products are identical. Why? Because they trust the branded product more. Brands make and keep their promises. Once your product is branded, you typically earn a higher market share while lowering your cost of sales. Loyal customers don't need to be marketed to as much. With an established brand, it's easier to launch new products. When consumers see the brand's logo on a new product, they instantly associate the brand promise to that new product from day one. There are other benefits of brands than just the marketing advantages. For example, studies show that companies with great brands have lower employee turnover. Popular brands help companies recruit the most talented and passionate employees. Brands create status and esteem for your company in the minds of industry leaders, community leaders, the media, and financial markets like Wall Street. But despite all these benefits, it may not make sense for you to create a brand. There are certain business situations where it would be a waste of money. For example, in completely new markets where there are very few, if any, customers, you'd be smarter to invest your resources in growing awareness and interest in the category first. If you're already the market leader with most of the market share, creating a brand probably won't pay off. If you're in a highly fragmented industry with hundreds or even thousands of small competitors, a brand may not be able to reach enough customers to make it worthwhile. If your business is such that you have only a handful of customers, perhaps even one customer like the government, branding won't do much. So take a look at your situation before you jump right into it. But if your business depends on creating loyal, repeat customers, a strong brand is the surest way to do it.
呢一條片咧會教你點樣去睇自己嘅八字，會教你由零開始去睇自己嘅八字嘅命盤。你將會學到咧1分鐘透過呢個 APP 就可以排出呢個八字嘅命盤嘅方法。最簡單基本了解自己八字嘅五行，同埋咧你八字嘅命盤上面嘅資料其實係代表你自己嘅命格啲乜嘢，仲可以學埋點樣去睇人哋嘅八字，到底旺唔旺你同你夾唔夾，定係咧會衝你同埋克住你。更加我會教埋你咧最快嘅方法咧，知道自己幾時會轉下一段嘅大運，自己嘅八字五行係欠啲乜嘢，同埋咧你嘅八字五行乜嘢係過旺。我亦都會教你咧乜嘢嘅顏色、幸運嘅號碼、風水嘅擺設係可以補翻你八字命格入邊五行嘅不足，同埋應該避開咩事物咧係你命格入邊五行過旺嘅事物，從而咧你可以自己為自己咧去趨吉同埋避凶嘅。Hello， 大家好，我係元新師傅。咁好快咧講一講我自己嘅故事。其實咧由細到大咧，我對玄學咧都係非常之有熱誠嘅。喺我細個嘅時候咧，我嘅夢想咧係成為一個出色嘅玄學師傅。咁我記得好細個嘅時候，我第一份嘅兼職咧係香港嘅71入邊一個便利店嘅收銀員。當時咧有一個上咗年紀嘅同事就問我啦，咁到底你大個咗之後咧，你想成為一個點樣嘅人呢？咁當時嘅我咧係義無反顧咁樣答佢咧，我想成為一個玄學嘅師傅。而佢即刻咧就笑我一個咧係一個冇大志嘅人，因為咧玄學嘅師傅其實係一個讀唔成書同埋旁門左道嘅行業，亦都係一個社會地位咧比較低嘅行業。咁但係咧喺多年之後咧，我仍然咧堅持住呢個夢想，我希望咧成為一個出色嘅玄學師傅，令到我可以用玄學咧去幫助人哋嘅。於是咧喺好多年前，我又租咗我第一個嘅辦公室啦，嘗試咧展開我嘅追夢嘅旅程。問題咧，當時嘅我係缺乏呢個玄學嘅相關嘅經驗，每一日咧亦都冇一個嘅客人。實際上咧好多嘅時候我都係蝕咗錢嘅，亦都意味住咧我冇辦法成為一個出色嘅玄學師傅嘅夢想。更加差嘅情況咧係呢一段時間其實已經維持咗半年左右啦，我一直咧都揾唔到嘅獨泊，已經有半年嘅時間咧亦都係冇俾家用。我嘅屋企人咧亦都開始對我有怨言，因為咧本身我係一個家庭入邊嘅支柱，但係因為呢一個失敗嘅開始咧，令到我屋企差啲嘅破碎。家人咧亦都希望咧漸漸攞翻去打工，成為一個安穩嘅男人。 當時嘅我呢，無論如何呢，點樣都走唔出呢個困境，更加一度呢患上呢個抑鬱症。印象呢好深嘅時候呢，就係我連去睇醫生嘅勇氣都冇，因為當時嘅我其實呢係一個不錯嘅收入嘅男人，貿然呢放棄咗呢個高薪厚職，去追隨一個呢可能冇結果嘅夢想。當時嘅我呢，只好呢去呢個保健嘅產品嘅鋪頭呢買一隻藥叫做聖約翰草，係一種呢抗抑鬱嘅藥物呢，好讓我呢可以繼續去堅持呢個夢想。提我嘅話呢，其實呢一種藥物呢對我嘅幫助呢，其實真係實際唔大嘅，而且呢食咗之後呢，感覺上呢都會好口乾，然後好似呢係一個上天嘅眷顧，又或者一個偶然，又發生咗一件好驚奇嘅事情呢，就將我喺谷底嗰度拉翻嚟。咁呢一件事情呢，令到我一切嘅環境都改變喎。你會唔會想知道呢係一件咩嘅事情呢？原來呢，係我當時見到好多人呢喺討論區上面呢，成日都會有人為人免費咁樣去占卜算命。當時嘅我呢，亦都抱住一個勇於嘗試嘅心態啦，喺討論區上面呢，開咗第一個免費幫人占卜算命嘅貼。好有趣嘅係呢，反應非常之熱烈。當時第一個貼呢，已經有157個人回應，好多人呢亦都回佢話我好準。當中呢，有唔少嘅人呢成為咗我嘅長期客戶，亦都有人呢即場拜我做師傅嘅。後來呢，斷斷續續喺唔同嘅討論區呢，我亦都會開貼幫人免費去占卜算命。每一次嘅反應呢係好熱烈啦，亦都有唔少人呢會話我準，亦都有不少嘅人呢希望呢我進一步為佢推算咁運勢嘅。當中呢，其實呢有一個反應比較好嘅貼呢，係喺連登討論。
The branding process has 5 steps. First, we have to define the brand and everything that goes into it. A brand is a promise, so we have to clearly define what that promise is and the core values behind it. Think of the values as the DNA of the brand. At this step, we also define how the brand links to your overall business and other brands that you may have. Brands don't exist in isolation, so we have to give them a home, so to speak, somewhere in your portfolio. We also have to define what are called brand drivers. Brand drivers define how the core values will be manifested into the marketing mix or key business processes that support the brand. It's all the things associated with a brand that help you translate its value into actions. The next step of the branding process is to position the brand. Essentially, we are shaping how customers think about the brand. We identify who those customers are, what benefits they seek from your products and services, and what they currently believe about those products and services versus the competition. At this step, we're making the direct link between the product's value proposition and the brand promise. Once you define the brand promise and how it's positioned in the marketplace, you need to express the brand. Imagine the brand as a person. A person needs a name, a personality, and an identity in terms of what they look like. You do the same for brands. At this step, we create brand names and logos to help customers easily recognize the brand and remember the promise that it delivers. At this stage, it's time to build awareness of the brand and put it to work for you. We do that by communicating it, and we do that both internally to our own organization as well as externally to the market. Why internally? Your employees and distributors play a critical role in delivering the promise. They create and deliver products and services that deliver benefits that customers expect given the promise the brand has made. Keeping a brand strong means we have to communicate continuously and, most importantly, consistently to reinforce the promise in people's minds. If you don't, brands lose their value. And that leads us to the final step of the brand building process, measure. You want to measure the value of the brand, or what we call brand equity. It's what you accrue when you develop, promote, and deliver an authentic brand promise. As brand equity increases, company value increases. You also measure the brand's performance. Is it living up to the promise? And is it doing what you expected it to for your business? The brand building process takes time and money, but if you do it right, you'll create strong, healthy brands that make your business more successful. Let's start building a brand. First, we have to identify the values of the brand. Remember that a brand is a promise, and underneath that promise must be a supporting set of values. They're like a foundation underneath a home, for example. If I make a promise to you, it's because I believe certain things are important. Otherwise, I wouldn't make the promise. The same is true of brands that we create in marketing. Think of brand values as the key behaviors or virtues of the brand that need to be expressed consistently day in and day out. Taken together, these values form the essence or theme of the brand. They're like a belief system of the brand. Determining the brand values starts by understanding the overall marketing strategy of your business. What kind of products and services do you offer? What are the key trends and new opportunities in your markets? Who are your customers and who are your competitors? Given that, what is your overall value proposition in the marketplace? You've got to have a solid marketing strategy before you can build a solid branding strategy. The two are closely linked. For this course, I'm going to use a hypothetical company that wants to create a brand for one of its new products. Let's assume we're in the watch business. We're coming out with a new line of smartwatches that integrate with other tech products like smartphones. Let's say that our strategy is to create a watch ideally suited for families. But not just families in general. We are targeting the parents specifically. We want to position our watch as the ideal watch for moms and dads. For now, let's call it the Parent Watch. Remember, that's the name of the brand, not necessarily the name of the product itself. Now, given our marketing strategy, we want to create a brand that delivers this promise of being the ideal watch for parents. We start by identifying the key values that this new brand must have for this promise to have any meaning to it. So, I start by listing beliefs that people might have about parents. For example, parents are special. Being a parent is an important role in the life of many moms and dads. Being a parent is hard work. Parents do everything they can to help their families. By creating this list, I'm looking for one or a collection of some of these to shape and form the main theme of my new brand. I want to create a sentence that conveys what the brand is all about. Let's try this. The Parent Watch celebrates parenthood by helping parents be the very best they can be. I like this. It's aspirational, it's linked directly to my strategy, and it has a strong emotional appeal. We can always revise and fine-tune this later, but for now, let's stick with this as the core purpose of the Parent Watch brand, both why it exists and what it believes. Take a look at the brands you have now or the brand you want to create. Ask yourself these questions. What is the belief system underneath those brands? Is it linked to your marketing strategy? Is it clear what this brand stands for now and what it wants to be in the future? Building a strong foundation is the crucial first step to bring your brand to life. A brand's values form the foundation of the brand. But now, on top of that foundation, you need to build more about the definition of the brand. Think of it as expanding and stretching it out. You do that by creating brand drivers. Brand drivers are more detailed and descriptive aspects of the brand. They come in different forms. They could be attributes of the brand itself. They could be functional or emotional benefits that the brand delivers. They could be self-expressive benefits. In other words, what the customer is saying about themselves when they consume the brand. To create brand drivers, make an exhaustive list of phrases or sentences about the brand that stretch the brand's core purpose. Don't worry too much about the wording of these, and don't try to filter them. Later on, you'll group them into similar categories, and that's where you'll edit them to get the most relevant brand drivers. Let's go back to our case study. A new brand for a smartwatch that's ideal for moms and dads. We call it the Parent Watch. Its core value is the Parent Watch celebrates parenthood by helping parents be the very best they can be. Given that, what else might this new brand be about? Let's start with the list we had already. Parent Watch believes that parents are special. Being a parent may be the most important role in a person's life. Being a parent is hard work. Parents do everything they can to help their families. Let's create more by asking ourselves, what else goes into being a great parent? Let's write these from the parent's point of view. Parent Watch helps me do the impossible by balancing tasks and getting it all done in a day. It helps me protect my family. It helps me perform my duties at home, work, and everywhere else. It helps me stay connected to my kids. It helps me teach my kids important life lessons. It makes it fun to be a mom or dad. Wearing Parent Watch tells the world that I care about my family above all else. Do you see what's going on here? We're creating a list of specific things that are important to our target audience. Then we take those and turn them into attributes of the brand itself or a benefit that the brand delivers. When you do this for your brand, you should have several dozen of these. Try to create as long a list as possible. Then group into categories such as functional benefits, the basic job that the product does. Emotional benefits, how a product makes a consumer feel. Economic benefits, how a product saves time and money. Self-expressive benefits, how a product makes us appear to others. Other types of benefits such as benefits to society or to the environment. Now, once they're grouped into categories, we look for ways to refine or combine them into a more coherent list. For example, these two drivers, Parent Watch helps me do the impossible by balancing tasks and getting it all done in a day. And Parent Watch helps me perform my duties at home, work, and everywhere else. They seem similar. Perhaps I could tighten these up into one phrase, such as, Parent Watch helps me balance multiple tasks at work, home, and everywhere else. Brand drivers put more meaning into the brand. We call them drivers because these are the ideas that you use to express and communicate what your brand is all about. So what is it that you actually brand? Well, that's kind of a trick question. You don't brand things. Rather, you create a brand with its core promise and list of associations as we did in the last two videos. Then, you attach something to that brand promise, like a product or a company name. By attaching that product or company name to the brand, your customers associate it with the brand. Now, I know that may seem like a subtle point, but here's why I make it. Don't think of branding like taking an iron and burning it onto the side of a product or its package like cowboys do when they brand livestock. That's the single most common mistake people make when doing branding. They think you can just slap a logo and a clever name on the side of a product and voila, here's my new brand. To be a savvy branding professional, you want to avoid this mistake and instead follow a disciplined, step-by-step process with a set of tools to create and manage your brands. That's what this course is all about. Now, once you've created the core brand promise and list of associations, the correct question to ask is, what kinds of things can I attach to the brand? The answer may surprise you. We've already mentioned products. Inside this bottle is fizzy brown water with a syrupy sweet taste. When we associate it with the Coca-Cola brand, the consumer memorizes this association for future reference. Every time a consumer drinks what's inside here, they instantly recall the brand promise and subconsciously think to themselves, promise made, promise kept. That's why we sometimes call a brand a locus of emotions. It's all the emotions inside that are triggered by a brand that define it. A brand is a memory jogger, a shortcut, so to speak. To make that memory jogging a bit easier, we give the brand a certain look and sometimes a name. When you wrap that name and that look around the product, consumers have a much easier time making that connection. Maybe that's why it feels like we are branding a product like using a branding iron on livestock. It's not only products that can be branded. You might want to brand just one feature of that product. Hertz, the car rental company, brands its Gold Club, an exclusive club for loyal customers. You can also brand a single ingredient within the product. My favorite example is when Intel created the now iconic Intel Inside brand. Most people have no idea what the Intel thing actually did or how it worked. It didn't matter. As long as the computer they were about to buy had Intel Inside, they were satisfied. Promise made, promise kept. If your product has a unique technology, especially if it's something you own, perhaps with patents, you can also associate it with a brand. Toyota, for example, branded its Hybrid Synergy Drive as part of its fleet of eco-friendly cars. Can you brand services? Absolutely. A service is the same as a product in that they are both benefit delivery vehicles. Google, for example, offers a wide range of services that are branded. In fact, an entire company can be branded. Take Starbucks, for example. You can also create a string of brands. For example, Amazon Kindle delivers books using WhisperNet technology. A branded company, a product, and technology all in one. You may be thinking, hey, wait a minute. What if you take this too far? That's a good question. If you're not careful, you may end up with what I call brand chaos, where you brand too many things in a way that might confuse the customer. To avoid that, take a look at your current brands or brands you want to create. Then, try to identify what you've actually branded, a product, a feature, and so on. Good brand builders then start to think about how these different brands exist together to deliver value for the customer. Brands need a home, a place to live. They not only need a place to live, but you also need to determine the relationship the brand has with other brands in that home. You do this by creating a brand architecture. Think of architecture the same as you would when building a house. The architect decides how many rooms you'll have, where they're situated in the overall structure of the home, and the role of each room, bathroom, kitchen, and so on. To create a brand architecture, we do the same thing. Now, there are many formats and models for this, but here's a general way to think about your options when building a brand architecture. First, you could create what's called a house of brands. Each brand stands on its own and has no relationship with the others. Consumers know the names of the brands, but they don't know the name of the company that owns them. In other words, they don't know the name of the house itself, your company, but just the rooms inside. The Procter & Gamble company is probably the best example of this. It owns many familiar brands that we use every day, like Crest toothpaste, Tide laundry detergent, and Febreze. But most consumers won't know that P&G owns these brands or that these brands are owned by the same company. At the other end of the spectrum is the branded house. In this approach, the company is the brand. All products and services within that company are associated with that single company brand, but they themselves don't exist as a brand. When you think about a company like Caterpillar, your mind conjures up images of tractors and heavy equipment, but you probably can't think of a product brand within Caterpillar. It's what we call a master brand because it governs over all the company's products and services. BMW is another great example. Now, in between these two architectures is a third choice called a blended house. Think of it as a mix of the two. A little bit of a master brand with a few individual brands connected to it. A good example is Marriott International, the hospitality company. It has a strong master brand, Marriott, along with 18 sub-brands like Courtyard and Residence Inn. It's a nice approach because consumers associate many good qualities with the Marriott name, but then each hotel property has its own brand promise for specific market segments. When you combine these with the master brand, Courtyard by Marriott, consumers instantly understand that unique promise. Pretty cool. So which approach is best? Well, it depends on your strategy. The branded house approach is more cost-effective because you're spending money to build one single brand. But this limits where you can expand. It'd be strange if Caterpillar wanted to go into the food business, for example. A house of brands is expensive because you have to build each brand from scratch. But then you have total freedom to go into any new market without affecting the other brands. P&G, for example, can expand into just about anything. Many companies use the blended approach to give themselves the best of both worlds. Building the brand architecture helps customers understand your brands the way you want them to. And that's a real advantage to building brand equity. Brands can take on a life of their own, almost to the point where they seem like a person. And just like us, they can have their own unique personality. Our final step in the defined stage of the brand building process is to create this personality, or what we call a brand persona. Given the brand's promise, you give the brand a set of human-like characteristics that your customers would expect from someone who keeps this promise. Now, why does this matter? Well, your target audience will better understand your brand if they can associate it with or think of it as a human being. Brands with a personality stand out more. We tend to like them more. And most importantly, we want to maintain a relationship with it. In marketing, that's a huge advantage because that relationship causes customers to be more loyal, and that's what valuable brands do. To create a brand persona, you have to create a list of personality traits that shape the overall personality of our brand. Now, various researchers in the field of marketing have studied brand personalities to find out what kinds of traits might be available to use. One of the most recognized in this field is Dr. Jennifer Acker. In her classic research report titled Dimensions of Brand Personality, she outlines a framework of personality traits that brands can take on. The 5 core dimensions are sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. Now, within each of these are more detailed traits. For example, under sincerity, we would find down-to-earth, honest, genuine, and friendly. Now, these traits are further broken down into subtraits. For example, under the trait friendly, we would find the subtraits of warm, happy, cheerful, and caring. Now, out of this long list of dozens of personality traits, our goal is to select a handful that create this unique brand persona. Let's go back to our case study, the Parent Watch. Let's take a look at our core value. The Parent Watch celebrates parenthood by helping moms and dads be the very best they can be. You also want to look at your long list of brand drivers. Taken together, ask yourself, if Parent Watch was a person, how would you describe its personality? I selected the following traits: family-oriented, caring, intelligent, reliable, strong, wholesome, spirited, and of course, fun. Now, keep in mind that these are not intended to be the traits of an ideal super mom or dad. Rather, these are the traits of a brand that helps parents become the ideal super mom or dad. Do you see the difference? Your brand may have traits that are similar to your target audiences. What's most important is that the brand has traits consistent with someone who would make and keep its promise. That makes the brand more trusted and authentic. Speaking of authenticity and trust, will your customers believe these traits just because you picked them from a list? They will, as long as you carefully selected them to define someone else besides the brand. That someone else is you and perhaps your colleagues, the people who ultimately make and keep the promise. Authentic brands are those that reflect the characteristics of the people who deliver value to the marketplace. Now that's great brand building. Creating and defining your brand is only the first step of the brand building process. At this point, the brand is still an empty vessel. Empty because you haven't made or kept any promises to customers. Remember that a brand is a promise kept over and over to a target audience to the point that they believe and trust it. Trust builds loyalty. And that is your next step, to identify the specific customers that you want your brand to be relevant to. For that, we use a marketing technique called segmentation. Segmentation means dividing the market of potential customers into similar groupings. There are 4 ways to do it. Demographic segmentation focuses on physical characteristics of customers, like gender, age, their height and weight, even hair color. It's a very useful way to segment, especially if your brand's promise delivers on something related to a customer characteristic. If you're marketing a shampoo for redheads, for example, then you'd want to group your customers by hair color. Closely related to demographic segmentation is geographic. Use this approach when you want to group people by where they live or where they work. It can also include things like where they go for certain activities or where they just hang out. If your brand promise is related to that location, this way of grouping customers makes the most sense. Next is behavioral segmentation. Here we focus on things that potential customers do or how they behave. It includes things like purchase behavior, lifestyles, and things like how customers use a product. Once again, it's the right way to segment customers if your brand delivers something of value related to this behavior. For example, people who want to drive fast are going to appreciate brands that promise speed. Finally is attitudinal segmentation. This is what goes on in the customer's head about the benefits they seek. Grouping customers by their needs or benefits they're looking for is extremely powerful because it gets right to the core of your brand's promise. For example, if you're building a new brand for an automobile, you'd want to group customers around benefits such as fuel economy, luxury, eco-friendly, or status. Selecting the right segmentation approach is critical because it helps you with the next 2 steps of the brand building process: express and communicate. Branding is about making and keeping a promise over and over to the point where consumers trust you and they become loyal. What do you promise? And when do you promise it? You answer these questions by analyzing your potential customers. When people buy products and services, they're buying a collection of benefits. You can categorize these benefits into three types. Functional benefits refer to a product's physical performance. For example, when buying a car, functional benefits include size of the engine, passenger seating, or how the car handles. Economic benefits are related to saving money or saving time. With a car, economic benefits would include the miles per gallon, annual maintenance cost, or the car's reliability. Finally, are emotional benefits. These are related to the psychological feelings you get when using a product. For a car, it would include things like status or self-esteem. Customers buy things for a mix of these benefits, but some are more important than others. If you know what's most important to them, you can appeal to that need when deciding on your brand promise. You can also raise the sense of importance they place on another factor and focus your brand on that instead. You also want to understand the steps customers take when buying something. That will help you shape the overall experience they have with your brand and decide the best point to make the promise. Typically, those steps are as follows. First is need recognition phase. This is where customers realize that they want something. The next step is information search. Once customers feel a need to have something, they start gathering information about solutions for that need. Once a customer gathers the information, they go to the next step, which is to evaluate the alternatives. Customers make choices based on what features are most important and which brand does the best job in delivering those features. It's critical that you communicate your brand's promise at this point. Eventually, the customer will narrow their choices down to one brand and go to the purchase phase. Finally is the post-purchase behavior phase. Once customers start using the product or service, they compare the results with their expectations. Did the brand deliver on the promise? How did the product make them feel when they used it? This phase is also critical because customers will form opinions about your brand and share their experiences, good or bad, with other customers. Great brand builders know they have a role to play in each step of the customer buying process. They know where these steps take place, when they take place, and who's involved. With these insights, you're ready to develop an effective brand experience. Perhaps the most central idea in all of marketing is that of positioning. A company's value proposition is the single-minded claim that it makes to change the customer's mind and cause them to do something. That something could be to buy a product, or to try a product, or to pay a certain price, or to visit a website, or just to think about your brand and its benefits in a certain way. How you position your product in the market will ultimately determine the overall promise you make to create your brand. Now, let's make a distinction here. In a marketing plan, you create a value proposition that is the central piece of your marketing strategy. So how does that relate to brand positioning? Are they the same? Well, not necessarily, but they're closely related. The brand promise is essentially your overall value proposition. It's a broad, definitive statement of the bundle of benefits to customers by the brand. It's a clear articulation of precisely what it is that gives the brand an edge over competitors. Think of brand positioning as the long-term strategic positioning. Your marketing strategy value proposition is more like a short-term tactical positioning. Let's do an example to see this connection. Using our case study of the Parent Watch, we know that our overall brand positioning is the Parent Watch celebrates parenthood by helping moms and dads be the very best they can be. Now, by design, we've set that at a pretty high level. But what if you're about to launch a new product, or perhaps just introduce a new feature on an existing product? For that, you need a more tactical, short-term positioning. For example, let's assume our Parent Watch has a new feature that allows us to SMS people automatically. Moms or dads can use it to create reminders for their kids that come directly from them via text messaging. I'm not sure kids would like it, but I bet parents would. So how do we position this new feature? For ideas on that, you go back to your brand drivers. Recall that brand drivers are more detailed and descriptive aspects of the brand. So let's look over our list created in Chapter 2. Now, here's one that might work. Parent Watch helps me stay connected to my kids. Nice. Our new SMS feature becomes a credible reason to believe this value proposition. And therein lies the connection between brand strategy and marketing strategy. Think of these value propositions designed around your brand drivers as RTBs, or reasons to believe, for the overall brand strategy. Promises made, promises kept. So take a look at your brands. What features and benefits of your products and services are you emphasizing in your marketing strategy? Then look at your brand drivers to find the ones that connect best to those benefits. That helps your target audience believe the brand is doing its job well and can be trusted to do it in the future. At this point in the brand building process, you've defined the brand in terms of its values, drivers, and persona. You've positioned the brand in the market and linked it to your marketing strategy. Now you're ready to move into the next phase, which is how you express the brand. To do that, you create a name, a visual look and feel for the brand, and you create a total customer experience for the target audience when they encounter the brand. In this video, I'll review the important considerations you make when naming the brand. The name you select for your brand should do the following: reflect the values and purpose of the brand, create an association with the brand's persona, be easy to say, be unique and memorable. Now, before coming up with names, you need to consider what it is that you're branding: a company, a product or service, a feature within that product or service, or perhaps a technology. How do all your brands fit together? In other words, what is your brand architecture, which we covered in Chapter 2. Let's do an example with our case study. For this example, I need to create a hypothetical company that I'll call the California Watch Company. It makes a variety of watches in these categories: luxury high-end watches, sport watches for running, biking, and so on, smartwatches for technology lovers, and family lifestyle watches. My brand architecture is house of brands, so these 4 categories of watches are branded independently of each other and not connected with the main company name. Let's focus on our new line of family lifestyle watches, beginning with our first entry into the market, the Parent Watch, helping moms and dads be the very best they can be. My product is a smartwatch that connects with a customer's smartphone, so it can do a lot of things. My strategy is to offer one model of watch, but in different styles and colors. Customers can load different functions into the watch depending on the ages of their children. Apps for babies, toddlers, and so on. Pretty cool watch. Do you remember the brand's persona? One of the traits was intelligent. That seems to fit. So, given the tight connection between my brand and the product that delivers on the promise, I'd be smart to name my product the same as my brand, in this case. That makes the most sense for my target audience. Once they understand my brand's promise, they'll associate that promise with the watch itself if I name it the same. Otherwise, they might get confused. The name Parent Watch is connected to the values and purpose. It's unique and easy to say, and it seems to fit my brand's personality. The name strikes me as strong, reliable, but at the same time, fun. I like it. There are times, though, when it makes sense to come up with a name that is completely new, with no literal meaning. The name Sony is a completely made-up name. The name Apple also has no connection with the company's products and services. In that case, you have to select the name, then communicate the name and its associated values and purpose so that people start to make the connection. It's usually harder and more expensive to do, but it can yield a powerful brand name that sticks in the minds of consumers. And that's an effective way to create and keep customers. The look and feel of the brand is what consumers see when they encounter it. It's like a visual identity system, a way for customers to instantly recognize when the brand is present. To create the visual identity of the brand, you'll need the following elements. First, you'll want some type of distinctive logo or symbol. A logo can take many forms. It can be an object that represents your brand. A good example is the Apple logo. It can be an abstract symbol like the Nike swoosh, or it can be a word mark, which is the words of your company or brand name set in a specific way. The Google logo is considered a word mark. To create a logo, it's best to hire the services of a professional graphic designer. The designer will need to know the brand values, the core promise, the brand drivers, the persona, and of course the brand name. Taken together, these elements will help the designer create a graphic look that matches what the brand stands for. Once the logo is created, you'll need to have your designer create different versions of it. We call these logo lockups. While your master logo should always be rendered consistently, you need variations of it for different placements and usage. For example, you may need color and black and white variations, or you may need versions for small spaces like a business card, or a large version for the side of a building. Your designer should also create a color palette for the brand. Some of these colors are used for the logo itself, but you should also have complementary colors that can be used along with the logo. These complementary colors might be used in advertising, or perhaps in product packaging, or even used for the product itself. Your designer should also help you select specific typefaces for the brand. A distinctive font helps strengthen the identity of the brand. Along with the fonts, you should also have standard typographic treatments. Your typographic identity should include specific ways of handling key types of text, such as headlines, or how you write URL addresses. Your brand identity should include a consistent style for images. All photos and images used with the brand logo should have a consistent look and feel. Image guidelines should also define when and how certain types of images are used. Will you use photography or illustrations or both? Will they be black and white or color? Nike, for example, relies on large, close-up, high-contrast images to capture attention and create a distinctive feel. Finally, you want to define a consistent tone for the way you say things. It's like creating a voice for the brand. This applies to everything from headlines in a print ad to the tone of a press release. Outline the specific language and words that can be used. For example, should the tone be formal or more conversational? That depends, of course, on your brand's persona. So take a look at the brands you manage and check to see that each of these elements are in sync with your overall brand essence. These elements must work together in harmony to create a winning brand identity. When your customers buy your products and services, they go through a distinct set of steps, sort of a process. We call it the customer experience, or sometimes the brand experience when it's related to a brand. Each step of the experience is called a touch point, where you can, figuratively speaking, touch the customer and reinforce the brand promise. This forms a tighter, more loyal relationship with the customer. The first step is to define the touch points for the typical customer. First is need recognition. This is where the customers realize they want something. The next step is information search, where they gather information from a wide variety of sources. This is a critical step because this is when a customer is most receptive to your brand message. Once a customer gathers information, they evaluate the alternatives based on what features are most important and which brand does the best job in delivering those features. Eventually, they go to the purchase phase, where they actually buy the product. Now, you might think that the buying process ends here with the final purchase, but there's one last step called the post-purchase behavior phase. Once customers start using the product, they compare the results with their expectations. Did the product work as expected? How did the product make them feel when they used it? What did they say to others about their experience? Once we define the touch points, we go back to our list of brand drivers. Our goal is to select a driver from the list that we can emphasize at each touch point. We have to decide where the touch point happens, when it happens, and what to say to the customer that relates to that brand driver. Now, it's a bit tricky, but it's a key ingredient of successful brand building. Let's try it with our case study, the Parent Watch. For the need recognition step, I want to use the driver. Being a parent may be the most important role in a person's life. I'll use this driver in my advertising because of the strong emotional message within it. For information search and evaluate the alternatives, I'm going to emphasize all the benefits of the Parent Watch, like protecting my family, stay connected to my kids, and so on. I'll do this on the brand's website. When customers buy the product, I'll emphasize that parents are special. We'll create a store environment and a shopping experience that makes moms and dads feel great about being a parent. And finally, in the post-purchase phase, I'll drive home the message, wearing Parent Watch tells the world that I care about my family above all else. Perhaps I'll do this with text messages directly to the Parent Watch, or perhaps follow up with direct mail. I want to reinforce that the customer made a smart choice. Great marketers know they have a role to play in each step of the customer experience. They know where these steps take place, when they take place, and who's involved. With these insights, you're ready to communicate the brand to the marketplace. Branding is all about making and keeping a promise. As a brand builder, you're the one who makes the promise, but who keeps it? Is it the product? Service? Well, if so, then who is it that stands behind your products and services? It's your employees and partners like distributors who keep the promise. Brand delivery boils down to people, and if they don't understand the brand, they're likely to struggle trying to keep that promise. Employees have to believe in the brand and live it every time they come in contact with a customer. In this video, let me share with you some ways to effectively communicate your brand internally. There are two parts to this. First, you have to train your team, and then you need to consistently reinforce it. Otherwise, people stop believing that the brand is important. When you develop training programs about the brand, you should consider developing different programs for different types of employees. Frontline employees, for example, deal with customers every day. The training program for them will be much different than for people back at headquarters, including your senior executives. Ideally, every employee is trained, new ones and especially old ones. Existing employees might have to change their mindset a lot to embrace and believe in the brand. Take an airline. Next time you fly, watch the airline's employees. Listen to what they say. Imagine how training on the brand would be different for pilots, flight attendants, baggage handlers, as well as reservation agents who sell tickets. Every job and every contact with customers is different, so the training should match that. So what do you train? Employees need to know the brand promise, how it links to the company's values, the drivers customers will experience when they encounter the brand identity, including look and feel, the name, and of course the persona. Most importantly, they need to know how they should think, feel, and act. What words come out of their mouths? What actions do they take to deliver the promise? You have to help them make that bridge from the brand promise to their actions, or they won't be able to truly live the brand. Training is important, but it's not enough. You must reinforce it to keep the brand closely tied to the culture of the company. First of all, make sure the brand identity is visible throughout the company. Later, I'll talk about how to create branded spaces, like your company's front lobby, as a way to reinforce the brand. Every time the employee walks through it, they're reminded of the brand. Most companies appoint a brand champion and a team of brand ambassadors. These are the influential company employees who represent what the brand stands for. They can help others understand how their words and deeds link to the brand and its drivers. Speaking of employees, many companies focus on hiring the right people from the very start. Given the characteristics of the brand, what characteristics of potential employees would best align with the brand? Your human resources partner may be able to help you with that. Perhaps the best way to reinforce the brand internally is to do a great job delivering on the promise externally. When employees see that the company consistently lives up to its promises, even in tough times, it strengthens their resolve and commitment to the brand. So take a look at how your company communicates internally to its employees. Good brand builders look for these everyday opportunities to reinforce the brand. One of the most important steps in the brand building process is to create a brand book. Just as the name implies, the brand book is the complete story of the brand and all the elements that go into it. It establishes strict guidelines on every aspect of how a company's brand will be managed. This affects everything from how the logo can be used, the look of your website, how social media is used, advertising, product design, and so on. A basic brand book should include an overview of brand values, the core promise, the drivers, and persona, logo specifications and examples of how to use it, logo lockups for different uses, the color palette, font styles, typography, image and photography guidelines, and writing style and the tone of voice. Now, a good brand book is a reference document to help employees and your marketing agencies execute the brand properly. That's why it's sometimes called a style guide. You might also include things like brochure guidelines, specifications for signage and outdoor advertising, design layouts for print and web-based projects, your store design, social media guidelines, even your letterhead and business card design. Now, be sure to include visual or written examples of each of these. The more detailed information you include in the brand book, the more helpful it'll be to make sure the brand is managed consistently. While these guidelines are important, a great brand book goes even further. It could be used to train your entire team. It could help employees understand the brand's essence. It could be created in a way that inspires people to believe in the brand. It might include stories about the brand and how it served its customers. It could outline brand goals and how it links to the company's overall strategy. A brand book can help employees know what it means to live the brand day in and day out. Great branding is about making and keeping promises in a consistent way. A brand book is an essential tool to help you do just that. A very important component of branding is the product or service that you put in the marketplace. They need to do their jobs in delivering the benefits that were promised. Now, keep in mind, they're not the only things that have to live up to the brand's promise. Every touch point in the customer experience can potentially play a role. But it's usually the products or services that are the focal point of your branding effort. That means you must teach the people who create your products and services about the brand. Take a look at your current products. You may notice perhaps the most common problem when getting into brand building. The benefits that your products deliver currently are not the same ones promised by the brand. Oops. In other words, there's a gap between product performance and the brand. And it can happen in two ways. Your product may be under-featured, or it may be over-featured. Here's how to find out. Make a list of all the key features on your product or service. Then, for each feature, write down the main benefit that the feature delivers. Remember that benefits come in different forms: functional, economic, emotional, self-expressive, and so on. Then, with that list of benefits, take out your long list of brand drivers. For each benefit, try to connect it with at least one of the drivers. Ask yourself, does the benefit link to or somehow support any one of the brand drivers? Let's do a quick example with our case study, the Parent Watch. Let's imagine the watch has an app that automatically sends SMS text messages to kids to remind them to do their homework. I can scan down the list of our brand drivers, and yes, I see two on the list that seem to connect with this feature. The Parent Watch helps me stay connected to my kids. And the other driver that fits it is this: parents do everything they can to help their families. Now, if you find that many of your features and benefits do not connect to your brand drivers, you have a problem. Your product is over-featured with unrelated benefits, and this will confuse your customers. In this case, you need to go back to your development team and start creating a new version of the product that closes this gap. You may find that the features and benefits on the product only cover a small number of drivers. Once again, you have a gap that needs to be closed, and you do that with new product development. Take a look at your product development pipeline and do the same analysis. You may be able to collaborate with your development team to modify these products now to be more aligned with the brand promise. If so, those products will do a better job at keeping the promise that the brand has made. Now, don't forget that when I say the word product, the same applies to any service that you offer in the marketplace. A well-developed brand informs how your products and services will perform, what they look like, and how they deliver an experience consistent with the brand's essence. To make a promise, you have to communicate it. The key is to select those communication channels that are most consistent with the essence of the brand, its authentic persona. A simple framework for this is answering the questions who, what, why, where, and how. First, you have to decide on why you want to communicate. Are you telling the market your overall strategic brand positioning, the core brand promise? Or are you building tactical awareness around some new feature or benefit of the product? If so, this type of campaign would link directly to your tactical marketing positioning. During the positioning step of the brand building process, we answered the next question, who? That, of course, is your target audience. You identify the specific customers that you want your brand message to be relevant to. You group your customers using one of 4 segmentation approaches: demographic, geographic, behavioral, or attitudinal. The one you use depends on what you're about to communicate. If it's a new feature, you may want to use behavioral segmentation. If it's about an emotional benefit of your brand, attitudinal is likely the best choice. Narrowing your target audience makes your communications campaign more efficient. Next is what you're communicating. And for that, you need to refer to your long list of brand drivers. The brand drivers give ideas about the specific message you want to include in the communications. Pick the brand driver that is best suited for what you're announcing to the market and the target audience you've selected. Using brand drivers this way in all your communications reinforces the brand promise, and it builds brand equity. Where you communicate depends on several factors. Remember the customer experience touchpoints and the steps of the buying process in Chapter 4? Select which step is most relevant to the brand driver and what you're announcing to the market. You may want to reach the target audience in their homes, places of work, during leisure time, or perhaps online. The entire customer experience gives you many options. And finally is how you communicate. The media channel you select depends on the target audience, how many of them you want to reach, the complexity of the message you're sending, and how frequently they need to hear the message. Marketers have a wide choice of traditional media, including television, radio, print advertising, outdoor billboards, and digital media, which includes social media, websites, and mobile channels. Each type of media has advantages and disadvantages. TV commercials, for example, can reach millions of people, but it's expensive. Billboards, on the other hand, are not that expensive, but they're limited in what they can achieve. It'd be hard to explain how to use a complicated product in a billboard. Whichever channel you use, be sure to refer to your brand book to make sure all the design elements and tone of the communication are on brand. Social media is an essential part of any brand building effort, no matter what business you're in. Consumers expect a way to learn about your products and share their experiences with others online. Social media is a powerful way to communicate your value proposition and enhance your brand. The most valuable and respected brands in the world use digital channels for brand building. Coca-Cola, for example, uses Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and other channels, and these are all integrated around its main social platform, a website called Coke Journey. According to Coke, its mission is to inspire moments of optimism and happiness and build our brands. To use digital channels effectively, follow these guidelines. First, make sure all the sites have a common look and feel. They don't have to be identical in their design, but they must adhere to the standards defined in your brand book. That means all logos, trademarks, colors, font styles, and typography are exactly per standard. Otherwise, you may confuse customers if a social media site doesn't look like the brand. Second, be sure all sites use the same voice of the brand. The tone and style of writing should be consistent with the brand's personality. Third, be sure to define who can and cannot post things to the various social media sites. It's essential they be properly trained on the brand and how to communicate the brand's values and how to comply with the company's social media policies. Finally, be sure to specify the role of each social media site. Overall, they exist to support the core brand promise, but individually, they might each have a different role. And for that, you need to refer to your list of brand drivers. Each social media site is another touchpoint in the customer experience. And just as you do with your other touchpoints, you can link each social media touchpoint to a different brand driver. Let's do an example with our case study, the Parent Watch. Our overall brand promise is, the Parent Watch celebrates parenthood by helping moms and dads be the very best they can be. But I'm going to create my brand's Facebook page to be all about this brand driver. How busy parents do the impossible by balancing tasks and getting it all done in a day. It'll be full of helpful tips on all the things parents do. The brand's Twitter feed will be about high-profile moms and dads and their successes. The Pinterest board, on the other hand, will be full of inspirational quotes about parents and how important they are to their families. I'll also create a mobile campaign where moms and dads can opt in to receive helpful tips on teaching their kids important life lessons. Pretty cool. So take a look at your digital channels. Make sure they adhere to the brand book, that they have a specific role tied to a brand driver, and that they are properly managed. Taken together, social media sites create a community of brand loyal customers who interact with each other and with your company. That's the foundation for a strong customer relationship. The packaging around your product is another great way to communicate your brand and build equity. It's one touch point within the total customer experience, but packaging is such an important touch point because it may be the first physical encounter your customer has with the brand. It may also be the last physical encounter they have right before they buy the product. It's that last 10 seconds right before the consumer decides to buy that makes it so important to get the design of your packaging right. As a brand builder, you'll want to work closely with your internal or external design team, and you'll need to give them guidance on these 3 factors. First, what is the functional role of the packaging? product's packaging can do a lot of work. It can protect the product that's inside while it's in the store or warehouse, while it's being shipped, as well as when the product's in your customer's home or work location. The packaging can explain important information about how to use the product or any warnings that might apply. It could explain how to store or care for the product, what ingredients are inside, or the price of the product. The packaging might have other roles, such as making the product easy to find in a store, serving as a gift box, or being easy to dispose of or recycle. Next, you need to decide the key brand and promotional messages to go on the packaging. Take a look at your value proposition and reasons to believe. Also, take a look at your list of brand drivers and review the functional, economic, and emotional benefits that the packaging may be able to convey. Use the packaging to reinforce your positioning and the brand promise. Here's an example from Coca-Cola. Look at the various images on the can. A beach ball, sunglasses, surfboard, barbecue grill. I get it. Coke means fun at the beach. That brand driver is communicated very nicely by this simple and clever design. Finally, you need to give guidance around the design of the packaging. And for this, take a look at your brand book. The packaging most likely will have the brand name and tagline. It should have the brand's visual identity, including logos and color schemes, but also look at the brand persona. What are the personality traits of the brand? And how can the packaging be designed to embody these traits? For example, take a look at this packaging from Gatorade. Even the bottle itself looks like the distinctive G in the word Gatorade. Very clever. Take a look at your current product packaging and compare it to the guidelines in your brand book. Is the packaging living up to all the expectations of the brand? Could your packaging take on more responsibility in the customer experience? Great packaging is much more than a slick, protective wrapper around your product. Packaging design offers a unique opportunity in both the consumer and business-to-business markets to influence customers and brand perceptions. Leveraged to its fullest, it can work hard to create and maintain long-term brand loyalty. To keep your brands healthy, you need to measure their performance on several factors. First, what is the basic awareness of the brand? You need to conduct market research to measure the percentage of people that recognize the brand when shown the logo or hear the name of the brand. Basic awareness is especially important within your target audience, so be sure to direct your marketing research efforts to those specific customers. After basic awareness, you also want to measure how well the target audience understands the brand. Can they tell you what the brand stands for? Do they understand its distinctive qualities and characteristics? What do they associate the brand with, and how closely does it match with your core promise and brand drivers? You may have very broad awareness of the brand, but if customers aren't understanding it the right way, then you need to go back and either sharpen the drivers or communicate your brand more effectively. Finally, you want to measure how well the brand is creating customer loyalty. And for this, you measure customer retention rates or repeat purchases. Or you might measure how likely they are to recommend the brand to others. If you find yourself slipping in customer loyalty, it could be a sign of several things. First, the brand may be losing its relevance. It might not be delivering benefits that are important anymore to the customer. Or the brand lacks differentiation, the degree to which customers perceive the brand to have a differentiated positioning distinctive from the competition. Or finally, it could be a problem with consistency in terms of how well the brand delivers across all the touch points. If you're inconsistent in keeping the promise, people lose trust. Now, these are all the external factors that you measure out in the marketplace. You should also measure a few key internal indicators. For example, measure the clarity that employees have about what the brand stands for and its values and positioning. How well do your employees understand the target audience, customer insights, and brand drivers? Your employees are the ones who keep the promise, so they have to have a clear understanding of it. Be sure to measure the commitment your company has to the brand in terms of how much support it gets. Is it getting its share of the budgets and investments needed to keep it strong? Are key individuals devoting enough time to it versus other brands or programs? Finally, try to assess how well protected the brand is. Are other companies infringing on your trademarks or designs? Are others taking unfair advantage of your brand by violating your patents or proprietary methods and materials? Hey, you've invested a lot to create and manage the brand, so it's essential that you keep others from diluting it. Measurement is important. If you measure these factors routinely, you'll be able to spot trends and head off any problems with your brand before they happen. Measuring brand performance is not enough. You've got to actively manage the health of the brand and keep brand equity growing. But things in the world around you change, and if you're not prepared, your branding strategy may derail, and you end up losing ground in the marketplace. Sometimes those unexpected events happen internally. The priorities in any organization are constantly shifting. A change in leadership, a new acquisition, a change in strategy, or perhaps a sudden downturn in financial results might impact your branding efforts a lot. Disruptions can occur externally as well. New competitors emerge. New regulations or legal actions might affect your ability to market a product. A bad customer experience or a product recall may be going viral on social media sites. Consumer trends change, and all of these things might affect your ability to address the brand from moving forward. So here are some tips to help you cope with these types of challenges and manage your brands effectively. First, all brands should have a brand steward, which is the single individual responsible for managing brand compliance within an organization, everything from product development to brand identity. What often happens in a company is that employees drift away from the brand standards. They're not doing it intentionally, but they might create a new version of the logo or color palette to fit what they need at that moment in time. A brand steward watches over the organization and reins in any initiatives that aren't in compliance. That's why many companies have the CEO or other senior officer of the company serve as the brand steward. Along with brand stewards, you need brand champions, people to represent the brand throughout the organization. And there should be one from each cross-functional department of the company, not just marketing. These brand champions form a committee that should hold regular brand review meetings. They have the job of reviewing brand performance measures and recommending ways to improve performance. The committee should review and update the brand drivers, cutting out the ones that are less relevant and creating new ones that better reflect the trends in the market. At least once a year, the brand champions should conduct a brand audit. How is the brand performing on all measures, both internally and externally? What trends are encouraging and which ones cause some concern? Finally, the brand team is responsible for reinforcing and energizing the company around the brand and everything it stands for. Creating branded spaces in your company lobby or corporate training rooms is a great way to do this. Events and employee activities that celebrate brand performance get people to see how committed management is to the brand, and it helps clarify the brand's essence. Brands are both a financial and a strategic asset. They deserve all the time and attention managing them as you would any other critical asset of the business.
So good evening, Georgetown. It's a pleasure to be here. For those of you who were here last year, you know that we had Bono come talk to you about what he did. And Ann Finucane helped us arrange that through all the hard work she does for our company. And so this year, as I was thinking about with Ann who we should bring in, I actually talked to Bono. And he said, boy, if you want to bring a real rock star, bring Warren Buffett in. Because here's a guy who has done more for philanthropy than I can ever do, and et cetera. So last year we brought your rock star, this year we brought your real rock star. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Warren a series of questions over 25, 30 minutes, and then we'll take your questions in the crowd and let the students have a chance to ask Warren about his experiences. And I'm going to start a little bit where the president left off, which is, this is your hometown. This is a part of your hometown. So what are your best memories about being around Georgetown? And
Well, I delivered papers at Georgetown Hospital 66 years ago. And I developed this affinity because in the hospital, people tipped. My regular customers, the one that knew me, never tipped. But I would go to the hospital, and one of the things they would do, they would give me cash tips, but they also would tell me if they were a woman that had given birth to a baby that was, we'll say, 8 pounds, 11 ounces, they would whisper that number to me. And the numbers racket was very big in Washington at that time, and they thought they were giving me this terribly valuable information, the exact time in which the baby was born or something. And I was supposed to bet on that number in the numbers racket that day. So I have a lot of memories of Georgetown. And I was here during World War II, which was really a fascinating time to be in Washington. And my dad being in Congress, it was really a window on an extraordinary time in America. And of course, at that time, we were probably more united than at any time in my lifetime about a common goal. I mean, that was the time when people like Bobby Feller and all the athletes the day the war broke out went down and enlisted, and people really did voluntarily in a very high percentage play by the rules in terms of gasoline rationing and sugar rationing and meat rationing and all that. And we all bought savings bonds at school to help out the troops. So it was quite a period.
well, so somewhere along there you started investing and changed the nature. And I've read stories that you started investing at 13, or whether they're true or not, but somewhere around that. And
it was 11.
what created the fascination with investing?
It took me 5 years. I had to save $120. It took me 5 years to get the $120 to buy a stock, 3 shares of City Service Preferred when I was 11. My dad originally was in the investment business. He really wasn't very interested in it, but I would go down on Saturday morning, and he had these books there in the office, and I read all those, and I went to the Omaha Public Library, and I read every book on investments in the Omaha Public Library by the time we moved to Washington. And then when we got here, I had the Library of Congress.
Did you go through all those?
Oh, I read everything, and I just found it fascinating, and incidentally, I find it fascinating today. I mean, it's an activity. If you're a baseball player or something, your legs may go or something. Well, my legs have long gone, but it doesn't make any difference in what I do. So I literally have as much. I always have had fun working, but I have as much fun now as I've ever had in my life. I mean, I work with people I love doing what I love, and it just doesn't get any better than that.
Well, the quote is that you tap dance to work.
Tap dance to work.
Yeah, and so what makes you do that?
Don't ask me to demonstrate, but it was nice to get that round of applause at the start. But I've learned that crowds now applaud at the start because I'm 83 and I'm not sure I'll be around at the end of the talk.
I've shared enough dinners where they know that you have more energy than anybody I know. So let's switch to a little bit on the philanthropy side. So sure. President Joya talked about the giving pledge. How did you come up with the idea with Bill, and how are you doing on it?
Yeah, well, we're doing great. It was, 3 or 4 years ago, Bill and Melinda and I were out in California and talking, and I'm not exactly sure how it came up. We decided to call or write David Rockefeller and ask if he would host a dinner in New York for about 16 or 18 people just to talk about philanthropy. And Oprah Winfrey came, and Mayor Bloomberg was there, and it was a private dinner. And I started having these people talk around the table as to how they developed their philosophy of philanthropy. It must have taken us 2.5 hours or so to get around. I mean, people were really interested in it. So Bill and I were at that dinner. We decided that maybe there would be a possibility of taking this passion, which these people had shown, and going to other people that had a great deal of money, and see if we could develop something where people would pledge at least half their net worth. And we now have about 115 people. I've been dialing for dollars. I call these billionaires up, and sometimes they tell me how they can't do it. And I decided, I tell them I'm going to write a book on how to live on $500 million, because apparently there's this great need. They just can't seem to figure out how to do it. They need help. But it's been very rewarding. And I received a letter from one woman. She and her husband had over $10 billion, and she sent me a tie. She sent me 2 ties, and she sent me this handwritten note and said that they hadn't really faced it. It's a little like facing your own mortality to some extent, making that plan, and that's tough for people sometimes. And so she and her husband had changed things, and over half of that $10 billion was going to go to philanthropy. They do tend to postpone the decision. So I tell these people I call, the last will is what counts. But I tell them, if I'm talking to some 70-year-old, I say, you really think your decision-making ability is going to be better when you're 95 with some blonde on your lap, or now? So let's get on board, fellas.
I assume that convinces them maybe the 70-year-old decision's better at that point.
Well, Bill has done it. Bill has gotten people around the world because he travels more than I do. But what we're hoping is people do pick up on norms. I mean, when I was young, I read about Carnegie and Rockefeller and different people. Bill did too. And you do pick up behavior from those who come before. And we've collected letters from every one of these people. They're up on our website, thegivingpledge.org. And I think they're worth reading. They're pretty remarkable. And of course, what we really want to do is get the younger people, like Mark Zuckerberg joined us, for example. And he obviously is going to appeal to a much wider group than I would. So we hope it becomes, this gospel of wealth that Andrew Carnegie came up with 100 years or so ago. That's influenced all kinds of people. Well, we've got better stories than that, on these letters. So I just hope it moves. Now, I want to emphasize one thing. Nobody in our group has given away $1 that in any way affects how they live. I mean, I have much greater admiration, frankly, for the person who drops $5 or $1 in a collection plate on Sunday, where it makes a difference in whether they go take their kids to a movie or whether they go eat out or something of the sort. They are actually giving up something that has utility to them. I am giving up nothing that has utility to me. I have everything in the world I want that can be bought by money. So I have a whole bunch of stock certificates. They have no utility to me, and they can possibly have enormous utility to other people in vaccines or education or all kinds of things. So the people that give up something that actually can have utility to their family and give that to some other person so it has utility to them, those are the people I really think deserve the kudos. But it's still nice to go where the money is. I mean, it's the Willie Sutton approach. So if we can work on polio or something like that, and it takes big contributions, then we want to go after it.
So the unique part of what you've done is with Bill and Melinda and their foundation, and on the one hand, how you're doing it, and secondly, that you've gone and said whatever the number will be, but almost all your wealth.
All my Berkshire wealth.
And so talk about the Gates relationship and why you chose them as opposed to creating your own foundation. Or
well, originally my wife and I planned when we were in our 20s that when we had everything we needed, we would use the rest for society. And I thought she would outlive me. She was younger and women live longer, and then she died in 2004. So I had to come up with a different plan. And if you've read Adam Smith and the specialization of labor, that if you're good at one thing, you're not necessarily good at another. You ought to get the person, to use your talents where they're most useful and get other people to give their talents. So, when my wife had babies, I went to an obstetrician. I didn't deliver myself. When I got a toothache, I go to a dentist. So I wanted to go to people who were very good at giving away money and who were younger, energetic, smart, and had the same objectives in philanthropy that I did. And the basic principle of the Gates Foundation is that every human life has equal value. And if you start with that as your basic assumption, then a lot of things flow from that. And Bill and Melinda, as well as my children, because I have foundations for each one of my three children that are of significant size. And you can read the letters, I wrote them up on the Berkshire Hathaway website. I do not direct them to do anything, but I do tell them to swing for the fences. I tell them if they succeed at everything they do in philanthropy, they're doing the wrong things, because the important things are the tough ones, and you're going to fail at some of those. But I've got much younger people, very energetic people, common objectives, and they work for nothing. So that's not a bad deal, Brad.
That stretches the money a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the way I read it is that you require them to actually move the money out the other side.
They got to spend it. And when I die, all of the money has to be spent within 10 years after the estate is closed, because I do not think that I can pick out some little great-great-grandchild yet to be born, just because he has the right name, of Buffett, or she has the right name, and they will be the best custodians. There'll be plenty of philanthropists 50 years after I die to take care of the problems of 50 years, but I want the money to get spent promptly, and I don't believe in trying to control things from the grave. I like to think I can think outside the box, but thinking outside that particular box.
That may take a lot of philanthropy to figure out. Recently I read an article about Eastlake and Tom Cousins. So this week, as many people know, the PGA finishes up its tournament at Eastlake, which is a golf course in Atlanta. And the story I read about the development is that you've now helped Tom Cousins in the development work he does with communities. So talk a little about that, because that's a little different than this type of thing.
Yeah, but it's the same theory of loving to back people who are putting their own time and energy and who are successful into a project that's worthwhile. Tom Cousins is a remarkable man who lives in Atlanta, just extraordinary. And he took this terrible, terrible neighborhood called East Lake in Atlanta, and against a lot of community opposition, everything it was crime-ridden, and nobody did it well in school and everything else. And he decided you had to apply a holistic approach to it, and you couldn't just attack this thing or that thing. And so he worked for probably 10 years to develop this entirely new community out of this total disaster. And then Tom and I talked about it, and I said, Tom, everybody's going to say that it can only be done because you're Tom Cousins and you live in Atlanta and you've done this. So he and I and a fellow named Julian Robertson, but primarily Tom, decided to see if we could replicate this in other communities. And it seemed to me that, and Tom, that New Orleans was a great one to do it. I mean, they've been wrapped by the Katrina and everything. So we've taken it to New Orleans, where we've got hundreds of people, and it's mixed income type community. I mean, we do not want to have it with everybody being subsidized. We want to create a new kind of community where people of different races, different economic conditions work together and play together. And it's been successful in New Orleans. We went to Indianapolis. It's been successful there. And we've got about 11 more towns we're working on now. And so Tom Cousins has really come up with something. He had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about a week ago describing this. But he's a fantastic human being. And when you get a chance to join forces with somebody that as high quality as that, and energetic and smart, and putting his own funds in it, you just got to jump at the chance.
We'll switch to the economy now. What's going on and move from philanthropy to the economy that you create your wealth off of, that you can do these wonderful, great things. But so, what do you see in the economy and what you're seeing in your companies, your operating companies, and from investors?
Well, our business has come back very well from 5 years ago when the panic hit, and it was a panic like nobody's ever seen. I mean, whatever you think about it, it was worse. I'm dead serious about that. We were right on the edge of the cliff, and fortunately, I give enormous credit to both Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson and Tim Geithner, and frankly, even though I didn't vote for him, never voted for him, President Bush. I don't know how many of you have studied economics, but in Adam Smith they talk about comparative advantage, and Keynes talked about animal spirits and all those people. But President Bush really came out with a great economic insight of all times, and he did it in 10 words in September of 2008. He went out there from the White House and he said, "If money doesn't loosen up, this sucker could go down." And I mean that goes right up there. Tear down those plaques of Adam Smith. and he backed up those fellows, and so we've come back from it. But business has come back. A lot of companies are having record profits, including many of ours, and the American populace as a whole has not come back. I mean, inequality is getting wider. The Forbes 400, which just came out, showed aggregate wealth for the Forbes 400 of $2 trillion. You go back 20 years, and that was $300 billion. So it's up 6 or 7 for one. It's different people to some extent, but this is the top. $300 billion to $2 trillion. And if you read the paper today, you've seen that the median income, is the same place it was in terms of real purchasing power. From 1989, it hasn't changed. So the inequality is getting wider. The rich are doing extremely well, extraordinarily well, and business is doing well. Business profit margins are terrific compared to the record historically. Business returns on tangible equity are terrific, but most, a great many people in our country, if you take the bottom 20% of households, that's 24 million households or something like that, housing, close to about 60 million people. It's the top level is $22,000. I don't want to try to live on $22,000 with a couple of kids. So we've got an economy that is delivering $50,000 of GDP per capita, and we've got an awful lot of people who aren't living well. So we have learned how to turn out lots of goods and services, but we haven't learned as well how to have everybody share in the bounty that we have.
So how do you think, is that we just got to grow out of it?
No, we're growing. We're growing. Yeah. I mean, if you take even 2% a year, if you think about it, people feel very unhappy with 2% a year, but the population grows 1% a year. So that means 1% per capita real growth. That means in 20 years, a generation, there's a 20% gain in GDP per capita. That's not bad in a generation. But the question is how it gets distributed. But this country, this system works. In my lifetime, I was born in 1930. I was conceived in 1929 because my dad was a stock salesman, and after the crash, he didn't have anything to do. So I look back with great fondness on the 1929 crash. But since 1930, since I was born in 1930, real GDP per capita has increased 6 for 1. Just think of that, 6 for 1. I mean, you went centuries when nothing happened for people, and this country works. I mean, I consider the luckiest person on a probabilistic basis that ever lived is the baby that's born today in the United States. I mean, it is a fabulous country, and the market system works all kinds of things. But we do have to, in my view, we have to make sure that everybody participates to a reasonable degree. We don't want equality results, but we also want a base level that's satisfactory for our people.
So you talked about the George Bush's economic statement about that could go down. What do you think the lessons are of the last couple of cycles that you've seen from an investor standpoint? We've got a lot of young kids out there. You've lived through multiple cycles in the 50, 60 years plus you've been investing, 70 years investing. What are the lessons, and what these are young people? What should they take away?
The lessons are that people will continue to make the same mistakes they've made. I mean, humans, and it doesn't correlate to IQ particularly. I mean, when they get greedy, and we had this huge bubble in the most important asset the American public has, housing. I mean, so you had a huge bubble in something that you could borrow heavily against. So you could run a margin account effect on a house instead of stocks, and the conditions got very lax. And so when that bubble popped, but people came into that gradually. When they get fearful, it happens all at once. I mean, when people get scared, they all want to leave at one time, and we had them all want to leave at one time, and that'll happen again. It'll happen with a different set of circumstances, but the human animal will keep behaving pretty much the way it has in the past. So we will have periodic recessions. We'll have an occasional panic, which doesn't all recessions don't come from panics. But the good news is, if you look at the 20th century, in the 20th century, we had 2 world wars. We had the Great Depression. We had the flu epidemic. We had the Cold War. We had the atom bomb. You name it. The Dow Jones average went from 66 to 11,497. You know, with all these terrible things happening supposedly at various times. America works. And when I bought my first stock when I was 11, that was in the spring of 1942, and that was a couple months after Pearl Harbor. And we were getting clobbered in the Pacific at Corregidor and Bataan. I mean, the Death March of Bataan, and in the European theater, the Blitz of England was on, and the Dow was at about 100. But just look at where we are now. I mean, the country really works. The trick is, I mean, it seems to me the obligation of a society as prosperous as ours is to figure out how nobody gets left too far behind.
Right. That was interesting because last year Bono's speech was a lot about how America is a society of dreams and you can accomplish more here. It was actually one of the best speeches about the optimism America could have by a person who's not American by birth. So and I know you carry that optimism. So after all this, what makes you most optimistic for the next decade about America?
Well, just imagine, 1789. Just go back just a few hundred years. There wasn't anything here, I mean, in this country. And Sir Christopher Wren, I think, the designed St. Paul's Cathedral is buried there, and there's a little plaque there, and it says, if you seek my monument, look about you. Well, I say, in America, if you seek America's monument, look about you. This country has all come about in a few hundred years. We had less than 4 million people, when we became a country. China had 300 million people at that time. Europe had about 75 million. They were just as smart as we were. They worked just as hard as we did. They had natural resources that were similar to ours, and yet we ended up with a quarter of the world GDP, a few hundred years later. We've got something that works, and we don't want to mess that up. We want to figure out what we do with this abundance better as we go along. But you don't have to worry about the system working. But you will have periodic recessions, and you will have an occasional panic brought on by something that who knows where it comes from. The thing to remember at that time, I wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times in the fall of 2008, and I said, the country will come back. It'll go through a big recession and everything, but it'll come back, and it's coming back. So don't ever worry about America. It'll tell you, you're in the right place.
So you've been famous for your investment strategy on basically that follows the opposite side of principles. Invest when the chips are down and ride up. That served you well. So what's your favorite time that you were able to accomplish that when you cut somebody down and
well, I always think my favorite time's gonna be tomorrow. It's always been fun. And there's a company here in Washington called Geico. And I first got exposed to that in 1950. I was 20 years. I was 19 years old. It was 51. I'm sorry. I was 20 years old. And I came down here and I came down on a Saturday because I'd learned that my professor who I worshiped at Columbia named Ben Graham was the chairman. I got down here and the door was locked. When I went to the building because it was Saturday, and I pounded on the door, and some janitor let me in, and a marvelous fellow named Lorimer Davidson spent 4 hours with me teaching me all about insurance, and he helped me so much in life. You're going to get helped by some wonderful people in life. It's a great thing to remember later on when you get to be my age, that all the help you've received from different people, because nobody does it alone. Obama got in trouble when he said that in the campaign, that nobody does it by themselves. Nobody does do it by themselves. We all sit in the shade of trees that were planted by others, so it's obligatory, I think, to plant a few trees ourselves if we've had good luck. It's been a great ride, but it's not over.
But you've owned, when did you actually buy Geico? When did you invest in Geico the first time?
Well, Geico I met Lorimer Davidson when I was finishing up at Columbia, and then I started selling securities when I got out. I went out to my Aunt Alice. My Aunt Alice would have bought anything from me. And so she bought 100 shares of government employees insurance. It was the first stock I ever sold. And then a lot of years passed, and Mr. Davidson was very kind to me in a variety of ways. But I went in different directions. And then in 1976, the company got in big trouble because they miscalculated their reserves, and they were going broke. And so I came back here, and I bought a third of the company in the market in a very short period of time. And then in 1995, by now our third had become a half because they'd repurchased their shares. And I went out to see Mr. Davidson, who was out in Bethesda. He was 96 or 97. And he had a bunch of stock in Geico with no cost basis because he'd held it forever. And I said, Davey, if I make an offer for this company for cash, you're going to pay a big tax. And of course, if you die with the stock, you don't have that tax. You got a stepped up basis. So I'm not going to make this offer unless it's all right with you. And he said to me, Warren, I've hoped for this all my life. And so we bought the rest of the company. He was a great man.
That's terrific. Well, let's turn it over to some student questions. So they're going to put a microphone out here, and we'll have you queue up and let you have questions for Warren. Or all right. Why don't you let's take the first question. Tell us who you are and ask away. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm Kasim Tavalali, senior at SFS. I was wondering if you have any stock tips for any of the students. You know, we're all trying to make a little living.
I didn't think they taught that at Georgetown. The best investment I ever made. Well, I bought a book in 1949 by a fellow named Ben Graham called The Intelligent Investor. I don't remember what I paid, but aside from what I paid for my 2 marriage licenses, that was the best investment I ever made. It's very important to have the right framework. You need to have an approach to investing that's sound. And Graham's approach is simple, but some people adopt it, which I did immediately, and most people don't. But if you have the right philosophy, you will find opportunities as you go through the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And frankly, you're most likely to find them when in periods like 5 years ago when we were having the panic. I mean, stocks sell at silly prices from time to time. Most stocks at one time or another sell at very silly prices. And it doesn't take a high IQ to figure out that they're cheap, but it does take a temperament that's willing to step up and actually act. I tell people, if they're going in the investment business, if you got 160 IQ, sell 30 points to somebody else because you won't need it. I mean, I figured out very early, you don't have to be that smart at this business, which is fortunate, but you do have to have the right temperament. And you have to be able to ignore what other people are saying and simply look at the facts and decide, is this stock which is selling at X worth 2X? And occasionally you'll find things like that. And when you don't find it, you don't do anything. So that's my generalized stock tip. No names.
I'll make it simple. Just buy Bank of America and you'll be set. Yeah. It worked all right for him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Next question.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Walker. I'm a sophomore in the SFS as well. So Mr. Buffett, in the past you invested in China, South Korea, and Israel. And recently you partnered with 3G Capital and Jorge Paulo Lemann from Brazil over for the Heinz deal. Does this mean are you tempted to venture into the Brazil market next?
I didn't get the question.
You did the Heinz deal. The question is, are you going to invest in Brazil next?
I don't know where I'm going to invest next. That's what makes my job interesting. I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, if you went out and played golf and every drive went in the hole, you'd give up. The game wouldn't be interesting. I mean, what's interesting is when you get in the rough and have to come out and a few things like that. So I love the fact that I don't know what I'm going to do next. You mentioned the Israel investment. In 2006 in the fall, I got a letter from a fellow, and I never heard of him, and I never heard of the company he was talking about. But he said, my name is Eitan Wertheimer, and I want to tell you a little about my company, Iskar. The letter was a page and a half long, and he said, if he sold the company, the family sold the company, the only company they wanted to sell it to was Berkshire Hathaway. And if I was interested, they'd be glad to come over from Israel and explain it to me. And it just jumped off the page that this was an interesting idea. So I emailed them, and they came over very shortly, and we bought the business. We handed them $4 billion for 80% of a company where I'd never seen it or anything. Eitan kept saying, you got to come over to Israel and see the plants and everything. You won't believe how wonderful they are. And I said, Eitan, I don't go to Council Bluffs, Iowa. You know, I mean, I am doing fine in Omaha. And he said, no, you got to see it. I said, no, I don't. I said, we can make a deal without seeing it. He said, well, if you buy the company, will you come and see it? I said, if we buy the company, I'll come. So we bought the company, and I went over there, and it's true. I've never seen plants like this. It was the greatest operation I've ever seen. And Eitan said to me, he said, you know, that's why I want you to come over to see these things. I said, Eitan, if I'd come and seen them, I'd have paid more money. We have a wonderful partnership with the people in Israel, but I don't know tomorrow. Our partnership with the people in Brazil, with Jorge Paulo Lemann and his associates, they are sensational people. I got to know Jorge Paulo when I was on the board of Gillette with him, and the opportunity to buy into a wonderful business like Heinz and to be partners, and they'll do all the heavy lifting. They run the place with Jorge Paulo and his associates. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us, and I don't know what the opportunity will be tomorrow. With Jorge Paulo, it was last December. I was going out to Boulder, Colorado, where he had a group that met, and he said, I think I've got an idea might interest you. Want to get out there? So I went out there, and as we came back on the plane, he explained what he was thinking about in terms of Heinz, and I said, count me in. And I will tell you one other thing, which is quite impressive about him. After I said that and went a little further in the thing, he sent me a one-page governance description of how it would work between the two of us, and he sent me a very brief description of what he thought would be a fair deal for both of us. I didn't have to change a word. I mean, those are the kind of people you like to associate with.
Next question.
Hi. You mentioned that people will make the same mistakes in terms of the boom-bust cycle. But there have been several recent financial developments, such as the creation of derivatives, which has since exploded recently, and you once called derivatives weapons of mass destruction. Right. Now that derivatives are a $700 trillion industry, do you see this as setting the stage for the next financial crisis?
It's very hard to tell. You know, we've enacted Dodd-Frank, and if you look at what happened in September and October of 2008, there were some extraordinary things done. The Federal Reserve poured $85 billion into AIG, and if they hadn't, our world would be very different. Hank Paulson guaranteed money market funds at a time when 30 million Americans with money market funds were panicking, and when $300 billion in 3 days had gone out of the non-government money market funds, 125 had gone back into the government. $300 billion, that was almost equal to the deposits of Wells Fargo or Wachovia at the time, which were then two separate institutions. Both of those authorities have essentially been I don't think they can do that under Dodd-Frank. I don't think that Bernanke could do what he did, and I don't think that Paulson can do what he did. When there's a panic, the only thing that will stop it, basically, is when somebody who has the ability and the will says, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And basically, that's what Bernanke and Paulson, and finally, Congress in a kind of a reluctant way, but said to the American public. And you can believe it. If Bernanke said, I'm going to do whatever it takes, nobody knows what Section 13.3 of the Federal Reserve Act is, and it wasn't probably meant to do what he did with it, but he did it. And the same way with they call it the Exchange Stabilization Fund of the Treasury. It was enacted back in 1934. Nobody dreamt it would be used to take care of money market funds. But you had these strong characters who had the ability to print money in the case of Bernanke, and they said, we're going to do whatever it takes, and the president was behind him. That is the way you end a real panic. And I worry, actually, that Congress doesn't like to give anybody that much authority, and it bothers them that the Fed has all this authority, or that Paulson acted as he did in TARP. And I tip my hat to them, and I'm not sure. There will be another panic. Where it comes from, who knows? But when that time comes, the question will be, are the people who have panicked, who have frozen, who have caused the economic engine to stop, will they believe and come right back and be doing something? I'm not sure whether what's been enacted is a plus or a minus in that regard. Regardless, the country will come through. But it's very hard to write regulations that will keep people from acting foolishly, particularly when acting foolishly has been proven very profitable over the preceding few years. It's just the way it works. Humans, they all think they're Cinderella at the ball, and they think, as the night goes along, the music gets better and the drinks flow and everything, and they all think they're going to leave at 2 minutes to 12. And of course, there's no clocks on the wall, and they're still dancing. So it'll happen again. But buy when it happens.
Next question.
I'll be buying.
Hi, my name's John Ruff. I'm from Georgia, so I'm familiar with the work over at East Lake.
Oh, that's great.
Appreciative. But you talk a little bit about income inequality. But if you look at class mobility rates, and if you look at average household income for middle-class families, measured with inflation, a lot of these rates have been trending down since the 1970s. And some may argue that it's harder today for the middle class than it's been in 30 years. And I was wondering if you had any more thoughts on how a rising tide can lift all boats, and not just the yachts.
Yeah. Well, that's what's happened. It's like John Kennedy talked about a rising tide lifting all yachts. And the yachts have been lifted, like I say, for the top 400 from 300 billion to 2 trillion just in the last 20 years. There is a very, I think, structural problem as a market system gets more and more specialized. If you go back to an agrarian society like we had a couple hundred years ago with most people working on a farm, most people fit most job requirements. I mean, it was that as the world has become more and more specialized, I think we keep moving away from that. So a market system will not pay well for a significant percentage of society. They aren't needed to keep GDP itself going up and people at the top. And I think government has to address that. I think it's I sometimes toss out to students this proposition. Imagine that it's 24 hours before you're born, and you're sitting there, Johnny or Joni, we don't know yet, and you're in the womb, and a genie comes, and the genie says, John or Joni, you strike me as a remarkable potential human being, and I'm going to give you an enormous responsibility. I'm going to let you decide the world, how the world is going to work into which you're going to emerge. You can decide on the economic system, the social system, the political system. You design it. And whatever you design, that's going to be the system in which you live, your children live, grandchildren live. And you, being wise beyond your minus 24 hours of age, say, I know all about you, genies. What's the catch? And the genie says there's one catch. Just before you emerge, having designed a system, put it in cement, you're going to go over to that barrel over there that has 7 billion slips in it, one for every human being in the world, and you're going to pull out a slip. It may say male, it may say female, it may say white, it may say black, it may say infirm, it may say strong, it may say bright, it may say below average. It may say United States, it may say Bangladesh. Now, not knowing which ticket you're going to pull out, what kind of a world do you want to design? Well, you certainly want to design a world that produces lots of goods and services and keeps producing more and more. You want a lot of stuff around. It could be the world's fairest society, but if it's on a barren desert island, it isn't going to do anybody good. So you really want something that works in terms of output. But once you have something that works in terms of output, you certainly want something that eliminates fear from everybody's life. Now, that doesn't just mean a lot of cops. It means fear of old age, fear of health, all of those problems. And you certainly want a system not knowing what tickets you're going to get that takes care of the people that don't survive so well in that market system, which maximizes the amount of output, your first goal. And I think we've done a wonderful job at the first stage. We have learned how to turn out lots of stuff. We have not thought as much, although we've thought a fair amount. I mean, when Social Security came in and all that, I mean, this country has developed in terms of thinking about how a rich family should behave. But we have not, I think we are in the stage where we need to focus more on making sure that the people who get the bad tickets do better than they are. And, we said that blacks were 3/5 or slaves or 3/5 of a person back when we started, and said, we said all men are created equal in 1776, and in 1789 we said blacks are 3/5 of a person. We not only said all men are created equal, but in the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln repeated it. It was 1920 before we passed the 19th Amendment for women, so we treated women as an essentially different class for all those years. So I think we've gone significantly in the right direction in terms of behaving better as a society, and I think we've gone terrifically in the right direction in terms of turning out lots of stuff. But I think we have to address the question of how do you treat the people that are left behind in a system that maximizes the output of goods and services. And that can only come through government.
Next question.
Good evening. My name is James Fishback. I'm the School of Foreign Service first year. It's no doubt that you're an outspoken fan of Ben Bernanke, but he's going to be stepping down in January of next year. Whomever takes over the position, do you think that they should continue the Fed's controversial buyback program? And if so, for how long?
Well, I think they should take Bernanke's approach, which he says he's going to keep doing until he sees more improvement in the economy. And I think he's been mildly disappointed, not hugely disappointed, but mildly disappointed in the rate of improvement in the economy in the last few years. And therefore, just the other day, he said he's going to extend it further until he sees it. So he's not prejudging exactly when it's going to happen. He's telling you the conditions under which he'll change. And the economy is getting better. We are in an experiment which hasn't really been tried before. I mean, Fed has a $3.5 trillion balance sheet, and buying securities is usually easier than selling securities, sometimes people find out. So we don't know how this game plays out. And just the announcement, whenever it was a few months ago, or the hint that tapering was going to occur, that had some significant market reactions, probably 100 basis points or so in the 10-year. And what will happen when they actually, if they actually try to deleverage the Fed? I mean, what has happened is the American public deleveraged and the government leveraged up through the Fed. If the Fed deleverages that in any big way, that will be a new experiment. And
but Lawrence, we were talking earlier. The question is, when they do that, the economy has to be growing faster.
And
the piece people don't take into account is they're clear that they're going to stay there until the economy grows faster.
And he has no pressure on it. In fact, the Fed is the greatest hedge fund in history. I mean, you've got $1.1 trillion financed by currency and circulation, which doesn't cost anything. And they got about $1.8 trillion or $1.9 trillion from the banks at 25 basis points. And I mean, the Fed is going to make $80 billion or something like that. The Fed is the fourth largest contributor to the United States government's revenues that there is now. That wasn't the case a few years back, but it's 80 or 90 billion a year probably. And it is under no pressure, none whatsoever, to have to deleverage. So it can pick its time. And if you have somebody wise there, and I think Bernanke's wise, and I certainly expect his successor to be, it can be handled. But it is something that's never quite been done on this scale. It'll be interesting to watch.
No, it will be, and we've seen the lesson in the market moving ahead and back just based on the last 30 days. So I think we're going to take one more question, and then from the next student.
Hi, Mr. Warren Buffett. My name is Shirley, and I'm from China. I'm currently a graduate student in Georgetown. My friend, Dennis Zhao, and I, we are both a very big fan of you and your friend Charlie. And we read his book, which is very interesting. He had this whole system of criteria on how to evaluate a company. It's all very confusing, but he said that Warren and I are always staying away from the industries we don't know. So you have candies, railways, and Coca-Cola. But now the world is changing, and we are living in a new era. The business models are changing. The B2C platforms, everybody is shopping online. Maybe in a few years, everyone is going to pay with their iPhones, and Bank of America no longer issues credit card. So non-profit is a new model, and
so what's a dinosaur like me going to do?
Yeah, there's just so many things you don't know about.
He'll take out his flip phone and show you, so he's not going to be one.
This is my new one.
What?
I just turned in the one Alexander Graham Bell gave me.
The question is, the business models are changing, the world are changing. The new technology, they're changing everything. There's no way you can just stay out of it and stay with the traditional. Now, for the private investors, especially in the venture capital industry, what would you think is the most important thing, the key in evaluating a company? I'm not asking about doing mediocre, I'm not asking about being average, but about excellent, remarkable. Just name one thing.
The most important thing is to be able to define which ones you can come to an intelligent decision on and which ones are beyond your capacity to evaluate. You don't have to be right about thousands and thousands and thousands of companies. You only have to be right about a couple. I met Bill Gates on July 5th, 1991. We were out in Seattle. And Bill said, you've got to have a computer. And I said, why? And he said, you can do your income tax on it. I said, I don't have any income. Berkshire doesn't pay a dividend. He said, well, you can keep track of your portfolio. And I said, I only have one stock. I said, and he says, it's going to change everything. And I said, well, will it change whether people chew gum? And he said, well, probably not. And I said, well, we'll change what kind of gum they chew. And I said, well, I'll stick to chewing gum and you stick to computers. I don't have to understand all kinds of it. There's all kinds of business I don't understand. But there's thousands of opportunities there. I did understand the Bank of America, and I'm able to do that. I'm able to understand some given percentage. But Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. And in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram, shows him with the plate. And he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says, if I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. Now, he was at a disadvantage because if the count was 0-2 or 1-2 or so on, even if that ball was down where he was only going to bat 230, he had to swing at it. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. 4 or 5 will probably do it over time. So I don't worry too much about the things I don't understand. If you understand some of these businesses that are coming along and can spot things on, if you can spot on Amazon, for example, I mean, it's a tremendous accomplishment what Jeff Bezos has done. And I tip my hat to him. He's a wonderful businessman. He's a good guy, too. But could I have anticipated that he would be the success and 10 others wouldn't be? I'm not good enough to do that. But fortunately, I don't have to. I don't have to form an opinion on Amazon. And I did form an opinion on the Bank of America, and I formed an opinion on Coca-Cola. I mean, Coca-Cola's been around since 1886. There's 1.8 billion 8-ounce servings of Coca-Cola products sold every day. Now, if you take 1 penny and get 1 penny extra, that's $18 million a day. And 18 million times 365 is 7 billion, 3 less 730 billion, or $6,570 million. So annually, $6,570 million from 1 penny. You think Coca-Cola is worth a penny more than Joe's Cola? I think so. So and I've got about 127 years of history that would indicate it. So those are the kind of decisions I like to make. And you may have an entirely different field of expertise than I would have, and probably much more up to date in terms of the kind of businesses that we're seeing evolve. And you can get very rich if you just understand a few of them and understand their future. But fortunately, I don't have to. I mean, if we go into Heinz, and I look at people pouring ketchup on, hamburgers and potatoes. I don't think it's going to change. And the nice thing about it, some products travel, some products don't travel. Candy bars don't travel well. I mean, if you look at the Cadbury bars in England, they don't sell well here. And if you look at the Hershey bars here, they don't sell as well someplace else. Soft drinks travel, and ketchup travels. I like products that travel.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Warren. Warren, I want to thank you for taking the time to work with the students today. And I think for all the students out there, just think about this as a person with a passion he still has at 83 to make that right investment decision. But importantly, what we talked a lot earlier about is the ability to try to do something with all that wealth that will help a pretty near-term set of goals in society. And I think you will find very few people in the world have been able to do both things so well as Warren Buffett has, and there's a lesson to learn for all of us from that. So thank you for spending the time.
Thank you.